Musculoskeletal conditions are the leading contributor to disability worldwide, with low back pain being the single leading cause of disability globally. That just blew my mind.
Yes, it is. It is so disheartening to see that because think about some of the things we've been able to achieve in our world, right? We're now, we went to the moon, we have a rover on Mars, we're talking about all these amazing things. We have electric cars that are automated but yet if you have back pain, it's like a life sentence.
Yeah.
Like we can't fix that. And the reason is because the formula we're using to fix it is wrong.
First, I think the best thing to do is I will let you introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Dr. Armia Abdo. I'm a physical therapist from the US, and I'm also the CEO and founder of Doc Physio. We provide instant physical therapy.
Right.
Yes.
And
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I think your work couldn't come at a better time, and the idea of on-demand physical therapy at this time when we can't get to the doctors, we can't see forget about physiotherapy, we can barely see a general practitioner here. I mean, you can't even emergency help is hard to get.
Yes, and you're right. This does come at a perfect time. But even before COVID and all these barriers, there was already so many barriers to getting help. Before COVID and the extra issue, only about 10% of people who have muscle and joint pain were actually getting help, and that represents about 40 to 50% of the population. At first, like you, I thought that was like that's too much to think that every one in two people has a muscle and joint problem. But then I started to think about all the people I knew that have an issue, and I was like, well, I think that actually is an underestimate of how many people are actually suffering. So you have about 90% of these people who aren't seeking help. Now you add COVID into the mix, and like you're saying, emergency help is already difficult. So to get in-person help comes with all these added barriers and risks. So everybody is defaulting to telehealth, but even with telehealth, you still have to take the time to get the help you need, and even then, it's not as much time as you may need. You get all your questions answered. You don't walk away with actually a strategy or battle plan to actually fix yourself. It's more just advice, but there's nothing concrete and tangible. And for our particular platform, we're creating I don't look at it as a better form of physical therapy. It's actually a different form of physical therapy where people can get instant, on-demand help when they need it. So anybody who's suffering, in literally 1 minute, they can take a test and they can have an instant program to use to start getting themselves healthy again, and not having to rely on a healthcare system that is so difficult to penetrate and to get into it. And even when you do, it's still very expensive and time consuming. And a lot of us don't have that luxury anymore.
Right. I think that's what appeals to me about your work is the self-help side of it. And yeah, I'm just so surprised at the numbers, because almost everyone I know in my circle, even if they're regular gym goers, they are athletic, all suffer from some form of pain related to muscle or joint issues, including myself. So if you can explain, how did we end up so removed from our pain?
Yes, and so there's a lot of variables that go into that because that's the whole psychology behind pain and even our behaviors. But I think the biggest issue that I've seen is just really a lack of movement because a lot of our world now is through the medium of technology, right? So because of that, we become very stationary because to view something, our body has to be still. We're focusing on something, and that ends up putting us in a very difficult position that our body tends to rust over in. And so it's to enhance our mind, our work, everything through a laptop or a computer device. We have to, in a way, sacrifice our body. So there's this exchange that maybe a lot of us don't realize. And because of that, that's actually why I wanted to lean towards giving people the remedies are looking for where they're looking, which is through a laptop, through a computer, or else we might not be able to penetrate them and get them the help they need and make them aware of it. And because our whole world is now through a screen, we've become very disconnected with our body. And our
Right.
body has a lot of fail safes to protect us from getting hurt, but it comes through the form of pain and discomfort, and those signals become louder and louder if we're not paying attention, to the point where our body's screaming at us to do something. So we just need to become aware. And that was the biggest issue that I've seen with a lot of people, is that we just lack awareness of what's happening in our body, and we operate almost outside of it. And everything, it becomes very intellectual or cognitive rather than feeling with our body. So a lot of us become disconnected, and then those signals of pain and discomfort just get in the way. So we tend to numb them with medication. And then when you look at the medication, and that's another way that we're remedying these problems, and the abuse of that has grown tremendously. In the US, it's another pandemic,
Hmm.
where it's killing so many people. That we take about 80% of the world's pain meds, and we're 4% of the population. So
Right.
just kind of, it tells you that the mindset of societies and how they deal with discomfort and pain. But many of us aren't utilizing physical therapy,
Hmm.
as we can see with the numbers, because of all the barriers. Now with the added barriers, it's like, well, we need different options of how to get the help that we need. And our world is changing, so we need to be able to give them the help that is consistent with how we do things now as compared to before.
But for a lot of people, I think what you're saying is right, because they only become aware when the pain is really chronic. And then, of
Hmm.
course, you want to turn to a pharmacological solution. I was also surprised to find out that children too, this starts from a very young age. It's not
Mm,
just
yeah.
related to old people, right?
Oh, not at all. It's just when you're young, your body's so brand new that it won't break very easily. It's like driving a brand new car. You can abuse it and get away with it.
Mm,
But once the car becomes older, then you start popping tires, you start damaging it, the engine, and there's so many different issues. So it really, we start abusing it at a young age, but the amount of abuse is growing at a younger age because of technology. There was even this research study that I was looking at where they found that kids who have their head flexed down like this on their phones and tablets all day started to develop fractures in their spine. And these are young kids who their bones aren't even solid yet. So if you think about it, how do you break something that is so malleable and soft? I mean, you'd have to have a tremendous amount of consistent trauma to it to be able to create something like that. So, and that just shows you that those children can get to the point where they can break a bone before they're really aware that they're having pain and discomfort.
yeah.
So think about that. Like, our body should be able to contact us and let us know. And I'm sure it is with these children, but that just shows the addiction of whatever it is they're looking at. That is so much more interesting and occupying of their mind than pain. How loud does that pain have to get before it wakes you up from your position? And there's even another study that I saw where if you chronically sit down like this and you're curled forward, we
Yeah.
all think of musculoskeletal system, right? That's like the muscle joints. But what we forget is when we curl down, our heart, our lungs, our digestive system is here. And they found that your breathing capacity can be reduced by a third by curling like this all day. So no wonder we sit at a chair all day, our neck starts to hurt, then we get super tired, so we drink coffee, and then you can see the spiraling of all the negative things that start to happen as a result of our bodies being in a position that is so stressful that it's causing it to glitch and slow down. So we have to supplement and try to speed it up and keep it healthy. So the biggest thing that we're all about is really postural health. Because if you don't mess yourself up in the first place, you're very easy, inexpensive, and quick to fix.
You're making me realize how badly I'm sitting, actually.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. So you said a lot of people have muscle and joint pain. I dare you to find one person that you ask, do you think you have good posture? And I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, oh, I have good posture. Maybe one person who was the model.
Right.
one of my wife's friends. So she has perfect posture, but it also goes with her profession. So if it's not part of your profession, it's almost like we all default to terrible posture.
So do you think it starts with education then? So start
Oh, it
teaching
has to.
young people about alignment, their body, their musculoskeletal health. What do you think? Yeah, I can't imagine they're getting any classes about any of this.
Oh no, no, not at all. I've treated some elderly patients as well. One as old as 106, and I'll show them the simplest things about postural education, and they say, "How come nobody's ever showed me this?" And you could see the frustration in them. They've lived a whole life, and yet they've been lacking this simple education. So it's a simple solution for a big problem, right? Because
Right,
if you don't fix it initially, then it becomes more and more complicated because things start to break. But with kids, a lot of it is awareness because they're evolving and they're understanding the world. But one of the parts of the world that we typically don't train them in is how to feel your body, how to connect with it,
yeah,
and how to get it to do what you want it to do, how to have some command and control over it. Now, we typically use sports to do
yeah,
that, but unfortunately, sports is more in the world of fitness, and it skips the health, and the health is the foundation. Fitness is on top of that. So we all go to fitness trying to use fitness to get our health. So if you have back pain, get strong, get fit. But it's like that. That's the next step. There's a step prior to that, which just becomes your awareness of your body and what it can and can't do, and you have to create balance and symmetry in it. And for most kids, they are not aware of it, but they naturally don't have to be because they're moving so much. We don't typically see these problems until we stick them in a desk in a school, and then they start getting addicted to whatever's in front of them, like their iPad. And
mm,
then they are very hard to change because now you're dealing with the psychology of addiction on top of trying to get them healthy.
yeah. Talk to me about that difference that you mentioned, because even I have to admit I'm not very clear on it because I always think of fitness as health. Um, you're saying that we need to become educated about our physical health first before we start to look at fitness.
Yes, yes, and we have to understand it. So, for example, fitness you can look at as any strengthening, running, biking, swimming. All of those things are fitness, and those things will come and go throughout your life,
Right.
right? So the issue is that a lot of times we will do a strengthening fitness like type of conditioning work,
Yeah.
trying to use that to like keep our back pain in check.
Right.
But unfortunately, those fitness type of exercises are unsustainable throughout your whole life. And the worst thing I've seen with so many patients, I have one in particular I'm working with. For 2 years, he was fine. He had a disc bulge, he had tremendous back pain, avoided surgery by getting his core very strong. With COVID, he stopped working out for about a month. All his back pain came back. So that tells you that there's a bit, even though he's so strong and fit, his body is a bit of a house of cards where you just push one thing and it falls apart. So as soon as the fitness goes away, he has no health underneath it. So it really opened up my eyes to the idea that how could we say he's healthy if the second his fitness goes away, all his pain comes back? So he was stronger than his problem, but that took a tremendous amount of strength for him to keep it. So the second that strength dropped and his problem became bigger, then he had pain. And what I ended up finding was the symmetry and balance. So one leg would move really well, the other one's very stiff. His pelvis is a little crooked. All of these things that create so much asymmetry in his body that it's under a tremendous amount of stress just under gravity. So he had to be very strong to maintain a bad posture so he didn't hurt. So, but if you had good posture, even though your strength would go away, you're still going to be okay. It doesn't take that much strength to stand up without pain. So it's not a feat of strength to be pain free. It's balance and symmetry in your body.
It almost sounds like we've we've convoluted two things, which is your health and your actual understanding of how your musculoskeletal system works, and we are literally thinking we need the fitness in order to strengthen that. But you're saying there's knowledge prior to that that's missing, and the knowledge that's missing is we actually need to know how to stand properly and be in our bodies properly.
Oh yes, 100%. And when your body is in the right position, it can absorb a tremendous amount of you put your body under stress, it evolves and gets stronger. But if I'm loading my system in when it has a good frame, all of my body is engaging, all of it's working. But if I'm crooked, I'm twisted, that makes some muscles turn off, some do extra work. So you become very imbalanced.
Right.
So if you're training and working out, why is it that only that side of your back gets sore? Or why is it when you do core work or sit-ups, your back hurts instead of your core feeling sore like you worked it out? That's because your body is in such a bad position that it can't deposit the stress where it needs to be. So we end up being really weak some areas, really overworked in other areas. So we're missing this balance. It's like having a bunch of employees where you have some do nothing, some do too much. And,
Right.
and the concept of fitness would be like, hey, that guy who's doing too much is starting to get weak. Let's give him more work to do better. No, that's not how we do it. We take some of the workload on that overworked body part and we have to deposit it in the areas that are not working. But you can't, that's not a manual thing. I mean, you can focus on that with your form, but you can't force body parts to work. They have to be set up right, because when you do a squat, when you do bench pressing, the muscles engage within like 200ths of a second. So that's not something we can train, that's something we set up. So if your body is crooked, it won't activate with the right time in the right places. If you get it straighter and lined up right, then it will naturally turn on the way it's meant to turn on. It will work properly. So help make sure your body works properly. Fitness is trying to make that stronger and more. You can do more of it, you can do longer of it, but if you're not set up right, then it's not going to go to the right areas and it's going to come with consequences. That's why you see people like they get hurt when they work out, or if they don't work out, then they get hurt too. So that tells you that okay, you're missing something in this formula of you trying to get better, and
I'm
it's health
actually
and that
thinking this
it's
is me
symmetry.
right now.
Yeah,
I,
it's all of us.
I have
That
literally
that
started something like weight training, and I
mhm.
had a strong core, but now my sides really hurt and my hips hurt. And the reason I'm doing it is because I thought I'd be much stronger, but I'm losing flexibility and mobility.
Yes, and so you're increasing your fitness, but it's costing you your health, which means you're not really your body is not really absorbing the fitness the way it's meant to be absorbed, and that could be because you have some asymmetry in your body that causes your body to deposit the stress of the workout in weird places rather than where it's meant to be. And you know what? It's literally everybody. And the crazy thing is, it's very predictable. And so, in the world of physical therapy or in healthcare, they treat the pain, or what I call the victim, not the criminal. So, if you were to go into physical therapy right now, even if you had the luxury of going in and getting hands-on therapy, they would see you through a very like funnel or a very tight lens, where okay, we're going to treat your back, your low back, because that's what hurts. But the criminal could be your ankle, the way it's positioned, or an old injury in your hip, something that is altering your posture, causing the your body to not work properly. So in our instant programs and based on the research and algorithms I've done, is this stuff is very consistent. So we can give somebody like you a full body routine,
Okay.
to get your body balanced so you can get your health established. Then you can go do whatever fitness you want on top of that good foundation.
Right.
But even physical therapy, they would just treat your back. They would treat the victim because the victim's loud, but the criminal's quiet.
Mm.
And so right now, if you were to go get your back treated, yeah, it'd feel better for a few weeks, months even. But if you go back to working out, for some reason, all that stress is still going to your back. So your back is doing too much, which means somebody is doing too little.
Mm. So where do we
And that's
start?
that's
Let's go back to first principles. Where do we start?
mhm. Okay. Yeah, that's a very good question. And this is actually what we do on our site. a test that you can take where you get an instant program. But for most people, we just want to give them education and give them some awareness, because until you decide you want to do something about it, you're not going to get better no matter what you do. So the awareness is the first thing. And there's a simple practice that you can do. It's really to establish the mind-body connection. And it's what I call flip it. Okay. Meaning our body tends to mold. Think of yourself as a piece of clay, right? Okay. If you were to be in a position for at least 2 minutes, we start to see that even on a hormonal level, your body starts to adapt to that position and change. And the most important rule is something called Wolff's Law. It just means your body adapts to the stresses imposed on it. Okay. So one of the things that gets us in trouble the most is our postures, right? So if I'm always leaning this way, this stress is, well, I'm a little compressed here, I'm stretched here, my spine is crooked in the zigzag position, right? So naturally somebody would say, oh, just sit up straight. But I really can't, because I'm so stiff that I started to rust over like this. Right. So I really can't sit up straight. So what I encourage people to do is any position you sustain longer than 2 minutes. Forget about all the little things that will make you frustrated. The big things, sitting for work, sitting on that couch, that side of the couch that you're always on, right? Mm-hmm. I would encourage you just flip your postures. So if you're always crossing your right leg, cross your left leg. And the reason for that is because what causes most of our problems is that we're twisted. So if you're twisted like this, well, if you spend a few hours of your day doing the opposite position, you're now using your positions to treat yourself. And in addition to treating yourself, you'll become very aware of, oh, my body can do this, but it can't do this. And once you become balanced and symmetrical, you'll find that it's much easier to do the fitness that you want to do without hurting yourself. And our programs show you how to loosen up those key points that tend to block people and make them twisted. So if I was you, Sophia, I would flip your postures. So whenever you find yourself in one position, flip it, and you'll become so aware of how you end up hurting yourself all day. And you realize that you have a lot more to do with your body's health and it feeling good or bad than we think. We're actually causing all of it. And posture and the positions we sustain all day is the biggest factor. So you flipping your postures for a few hours.
You're saying we need to change every 2 minutes. We need to move around a little.
No, not every 2 minutes. Okay. Any position you're in for longer than 2 minutes becomes a position that can start to hurt you. Okay. But if you flip your postures, you can now use that position to make you better. So it can become your treatment. So instead of you spending 8 hours hurting yourself like this, you're spending 8 hours treating yourself and you're molding yourself. Oh yes, so when you flip your positions, it will restore your balance in your body. Mm-hmm. And once you're balanced and once you feel even left to right, you're no longer twisted. And when you're no longer twisted, then you have that good, healthy foundation to start doing fitness on top of. Right. So our goal is not to replace people doing fitness. It's just to establish that baseline of health so they can do whatever they want on top of it and really give them the freedom back. How long can we do these things that aren't working? Because even as a whole, a lot of people get physical therapy and feel better, even for their low back pain, but how come it doesn't last? Why does it keep coming back? Like, I can cure all these, my body can cure all these things, but why can't it cure these problems? Mm-hmm. And that just shows you that the stress causing the problem is still present. So we're missing something. And that's the education, the awareness we're talking about. And low back ends up being the number one issue for everybody. And that is the primary issue. So everybody in their life will, at some point, have some bouts of low back pain. Right. And we don't know what to do about it, but it's very clear and simple what needs to be done. It's not available in our healthcare system because of the way we practice. So the model in the construct we've created is not sufficient enough to handle this problem. We have to look at these problems a little bit more globally and look at all the different parts. And just to show you how common low back pain is, I'll get a handful of patients and, we'll talk about, let's just say, their knee pain. And then I'll always ask them, do you have any other pains in your body that I need to know about? And they're like, no. And then I ask them, okay, what about your low back? They're like, okay, yeah, my back, but I have the normal amount of pain there. Yeah. What do you mean normal? We've normalized it. And that it's crazy, right? That people think they're supposed to have back pain. You
Yeah.
hear doctors say, "Oh, you have back pain. It's just a part of aging." It's like, no, it's not. Pain is not a normal part of the aging process. It comes and goes when we're in trouble, but it shouldn't be present all the time.
It sounds like there's a lot of misinformation that we need to disabuse ourselves from,
Yes, we
So,
have to change our point of view of what pains are and what they mean, and realize that pain is just it's the victim crying out, but it's not the criminal. And we're really good at treating the victim with medication, hands-on treatment, but nobody looks at the whole body and thinks about the criminal and who's causing all this. And low back, unfortunately, is the largest criminal in our world, to the point where it creates so much suffering. And then you look at, well, what are the things that are killing people the most? Diabetes, heart disease, things like that, right?
yeah,
What's the number one remedy for those things? Exercise. Who's going to exercise when they have chronic low back pain?
right,
So it's a missing formula. It's a missing variable in all the formulas to treat everything in our body. And that's what's beautiful about our physical body, is that we can use it. It's like the first line of defense. Once it goes downhill, you're susceptible to everything else internally. So in my opinion, this should be standard of care, primary care that everybody gets. The education, like, take care of your physical body, keep it moving well, balanced, have symmetry, and you'll be surprised how well you can manage anything that happens to you, any disease process that can happen to you elsewhere.
right. I mean, yeah, I also read that it's linked to depression, um,
Oh yeah,
because yeah, it totally makes sense. If you're physically hurting and people are saying to you, oh, you need to get fit, go to the gym, but you can't go to the gym because you're physically hurting, eventually,
yes.
I mean, pretty soon you get depressed, right?
Oh yes, because things start being taken away from you, and you become there's no bigger slave, or there's how can I say this? There's no worse of a form of slavery than to be stuck in your own body, where you have no freedom and you can't do anything, and it takes away all of your rights,
Mm,
and it's so disheartening. And the fact is that we can help those people, and there is a way to do it, but a lot of them, for many reasons, just are don't have the access to the help that they need. And even when they do, even that small percent, the 10% get the help they need, it's not really holistic in a way that is going to solve their problem. It's seen through the lens of money, right? Because when we're treating you for money, it's like, oh, we got to hurry up and fix this problem, or at least get the pain down enough where they can go away so the insurance stops paying.
right.
So there's all these limitations and extra barriers on top of it. So for us, with the $30 a month subscription, we're trying to remove the barrier of money. It takes the number one success factor when it comes to resolving health issues, is how fast you get help. So we've created an instant program to overcome that barrier for people as well. And we're creating AI in our platform to allow us to feed so much content in it, where at some point it's going to be more effective than an in-person physical therapist.
Wow.
So we're creating a new way of physical therapy where people can get the help that they need instantaneously. And that doesn't exist in our world right now, but it's the number one reason it's the number one reason for success in treatment, is how fast you can get the help. Because think about your back pain now. If you wanted to go get help, what's the soonest you can get in there?
Mm, mm.
Anywhere from, like, if you're lucky, 1 to 2 to 3 days to like a month.
Yeah, I'd say
If
more
you're
like
lucky. Yeah, more like a month. And imagine if you spoke to a doctor, you had tremendous amount of back pain. You're like, well, I can't get it in for a month. He's like, well, take these pain meds until then. And what are you going to do for a month? You just get worse. And
mm,
so now you're going to be difficult and hard to treat. You're going to lose your enthusiasm for actually getting it fixed. But what if you could just say, okay, I'll get it help. You click on a button, and the next thing you know, your program's right there. You can get started right now.
right.
And that's our world right now. And unfortunately, that world hasn't transferred over to healthcare yet. And that's where we come in.
So let's say somebody has serious health issues, obesity, they have the worst physical condition you can imagine, what's their first step? They come on your website and get what?
Oh, the first thing that they can do is they can take our test.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have an online test. It's anywhere depending on how you click through it. It probably takes you 2 minutes to
Mm-hmm.
go through. It's only anywhere between like 2 and 4 questions,
Okay.
depending. And then it will create an instant program right there. Then you register and you're on the platform immediately.
Right.
But in addition to that, we have a tools and resource pages where we're answering all the questions around the edges for people. As
Right.
far as, okay, you have a program, but you have a question about this, you have a question about that, and we also have a chat bot on there where you can submit questions and we'll create video answers for them.
Right.
So we'll keep feeding our library to the point where the AI is so intelligent and quick with it that it can get you your answer immediately. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing your program and you're wondering, well, how long do I have to do this one for, or how long should I do this, or you have questions about, well, what does it mean if I have a disc bulge? Those are all the things that we're going to be answering in video form for people. And in addition to that, I wrote a book called Seeing Beyond the Pain.
Yeah.
And if you register for our newsletter, you'll get a free copy of it, an ebook and audiobook version. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really about my own journey of health and wellness, because it's one thing to have the academic insight to know how to treat these things, but until you've gone through it yourself, you're not going to see it fully. But
Can
once
you
you do
talk to
it, it's
me a little
incredible.
about your own journey to health?
Oh, yes. So I had key point in time, I had tremendous amount of back pain and I had sciatica. I ended up getting 2 epidurals. And I remember it all came on. I was walking up the stairs and my leg just stopped working. I was lying on the floor for about 2 hours, going
Right.
through all the emotions
Right.
of, how can I even work if I do this? And then, but if I can't overcome this pain, what am I doing with my work?
Mm-hmm.
And this is when I was working in the model of healthcare insurance in that construct. But after realizing that, I really had to change the way I view the body because I wanted to cure myself, not just patch it up.
Mm-hmm.
And so during that evolution and that transformation of my point of view of the body, of how to treat it to get it better, I created all of the things I'm offering now. And that process was about, you know, 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
of where I was testing my algorithms, testing my model, using it on hundreds of patients and seeing things that, were so obvious after you shine the light on them.
Right.
And I had these realizations of, oh, my posture, what can I do to help myself? And I realized that there's so much that we can do for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to bring all of these um, elite types of treatments that most people don't have access to. You have to find some guru in the middle of somewhere to find it. Now I want to bring it to the mainstream for people. So a lot of my own struggles have created the inspiration and creativity for what I'm doing now. And now I'm fine. Thank God. No surgery, no problems. And I don't wish that on anybody, but fortunate for me, I was able to use that incident to enhance my work and what I can do for people.
I also saw the video of the woman who had had C-section.
Oh, yes, yes.
So can you talk to me a little bit about, first of all, pregnancy and the alignment of the woman's body? Obviously, our hips change. I had really bad back pain during that time, and I was really fortunate that I worked for a company that helped me get, constant physiotherapy because I had private insurance. But again, this isn't something that is available if you don't have private insurance. So pregnancy, what should women know?
Well, it's first of all, me being a man, of course I won't have the direct experience, but my wife and I, we have a 9-month-old now, and so
Yeah.
I've been around her and tried to feel her experience as much as possible.
Mhm.
So I'll share what I've realized from it, knowing that of course there's a limitation on my vision of it because I've never directly felt it. So number one is that around the second trimester, you start to release relaxant, which is a ligament, which is a hormone that relaxes the ligament so your body can stretch. And if you think about the areas your pelvis stretches to accommodate more space for the baby growing, is that there's an attachment in the front called your pubic symphysis. It's right over, like around your groin area, right at the top. And then you have two in the back, like the SI areas where the dimples are for most people in their back. So you have these three areas that have ligaments. So when you expand, those are the areas that will open to
Right.
accommodate the stress.
Uh-huh.
So because of that, now the puzzle pieces no longer fit in so tight, they're a little bit stretched, so they can slip out of position. And that's where people, women need kind of the constant treatment from the second to the third trimester just to keep all the tension, because if your body doesn't fit together very well, like the puzzle pieces, all the muscle tissues around that will start to get real tense to try and hold you together. So then they end up getting so tired and overworked that they become uncomfortable. So you need constant maintenance for those muscles during the process just to keep them healthy enough to hold that ring together. Because if they fail, then things start to shift. You can get sciatica, muscles get tense, and so on.
Yeah.
But if you end up having a C-section afterwards,
Yes.
then what happens is that now we're treating the scar tissue, because that scar tissue is in an area that is cut through your core muscles. So they tell you, oh, go get your core strong, but you can't really put strength into that area because of the damage. So your body has a hard time engaging and getting tight there. So that's where our treatments come in. And for example, that patient that I was demoing on the site, she had tremendous amount of back pain. And she started getting thigh pain and groin pain. And I told her it's all coming from your C-section scar. And she couldn't really bend left to right very well. We released the scar and her pain went away.
But you're literally taking like a sharp blade, it looks like, and
oh yes, yeah,
scratching the scar tissue. And what does that do? It releases.
Yeah, well, that tool, it's a stainless steel massage tool. And it looks intimidating and scary, but the benefit of it is that it's so powerful that it doesn't take much energy for you as a practitioner to use it. All you have to do is use it very lightly, which is good, because that's the misconception is people, they see like, oh, I want the easy looking foam roll or the soft one. But then that means you have to do more of the work. Let it be a very powerful tool, and then you can use it lightly. But what that tool is good for, think of it like this. Scar tissue is like rust. And rust will stick to everything, or like a spider web that attaches to everything. So when you have a C-section, you have the skin, you have the fascia, you have the muscles. They have to cut all the way through that to get inside. So when you heal, these parts like get stuck together. So when you take that stainless steel tool at the very top, you can like, it's like scraping the rust off.
Right.
So these two areas detach. And once they detach, they let go of your body. And the way you can look at it is, if you can see my shirt here, imagine this is my skin. And here I have let's just say they have a cut here. It will do this. So then over a few months or years, you're like, my shoulder's starting to hurt, my neck's starting to hurt. And people are like, well, why? And I come back and I tell them, oh, it's the scar. They're like, yeah, but my pain is over here. Yeah, but it's getting pulled from here.
Right.
That's the whole criminal and victim thing. This is the criminal. This is the victim. Your neck and shoulder are just trying to fight it, but you can get strong to fight it. But how strong do you have to be? And eventually you'll submit to it. And then it starts to create more and more problems.
Yeah, most of us just think, oh, do more yoga, do more Pilates.
Do more yoga. And she was actually a yoga teacher. And I do a lot of yoga myself. Yeah, so she was stretching the scar tissue a lot. The scar tissue is unique. Stretching it is not an.
You were saying, so the lady in the video, she's a yoga teacher.
A yoga teacher. Yeah, she's one of my friends. My wife's a yoga teacher as well. And, so she does a lot of yoga. She's constantly stretching. And mind you, that C-section scar for her was, I think, 2 or 3 years old.
Right.
But she didn't start having pain until about 2 or 3 years later. So because of the time gap, she didn't relate the two together. But that's what's amazing about our physical body, is that everything that happened to us in our whole history is imprinted on it. So if you can translate what the body is trying to tell you, then it becomes very clear. So for me, I speak the language, you know. So right when I look at her body, I was like, oh, it's a scar. And after releasing the scar, you can see how much freer her movement is. And the reason it takes treatment for scar tissue is because you have to disrupt it with tools like that. You know, it's not enough just to stretch it because everything's stuck together. So you have to scrape it. And
Yeah.
it sounds intense and a
Sounds
little scary.
painful. It sounds like it will bleed. Is it?
Well, it can if you're super aggressive, you know, with it. But even if it bleeds, you're not hurting yourself. You're releasing the tension. And so what I encourage people to do is we'll start off easy, you know, with it, of course, and get familiar with your body because most people are scared of their problems, so they want to hide from it.
Yes.
But imagine you're doing that consciously. Imagine subconsciously. How well are you going to heal that area if you're trying to be blind to it?
Oh my God.
Because your mind decides where the resources go. So
Yeah.
don't disconnect from that area. But yet that area is causing all of your pains, and you're trying to fix the pains, but you're trying to negotiate with the pains to fix it rather than the problem.
But
So
is this knowledge that all physiotherapists have? Because I have never heard of that before. That,
it's it's not
addiction,
it's
scar
not
tissue.
because yeah, because most people who come in, well, for example, this goes back to the construct of healthcare. Technically, physios, they are aware of this stuff. They just can't see it because the world that they're living in doesn't allow them to. Because if you came in with a prescription for low back pain, but the scar is causing the low back pain, well, technically, I'm only allowed to really treat your low back pain,
Mm.
not the scar.
Oh, that's what you were saying, which is, they don't really look at the body as a whole. And
Yes.
yeah, and then
But
that,
it's so obvious once you do. I mean, you tell anybody, it's like, well, you literally touch it and move it around. I've had some girls that are like, oh, I have back pain when I move this way. And all we do is grab the scar and like stretch it with you. And the pain goes away. So we know, oh, it's a scar. It's so simple, but yet we're so blind to it because the world we're in forces us to not look at it. We have blinders on,
but that means
only look at the
everybody,
back.
doesn't that mean though that everybody who's had surgery has the same kind of problem? Because I had knee surgery many, many years ago when I was like 16, and I still have issues with that knee. So nobody has ever said that that has to do with the surgery.
Yes, and 100%. Anybody who's ever had surgery, they need to be remodeled in a way. Think of it this way: like you have a hole in your wall, you put the plaster up. Okay, do you just leave it there like that? That's scar tissue. No, no, no. You have to go and sand it down to smooth it out. Then you paint it. It's like nobody once they just slap it on there, they're like, okay, you're good to go. It's like no, you have to remodel it so it functions and it looks and it acts like the wall,
Okay.
or the body part it's supposed to be, because scar tissue will only get so much better on its own, and eventually it's going to leave you with a weakness in that area. And it's a very simple treatment that you yourself can do to yourself. It's just how do you do it? Who's going to tell you about it? And that's where we come in. It's very simple, and even those tools that scraper tool, we sell it on our site as well too.
Mhm.
So we're giving people all the resources they need to get themselves right. And
Right.
yes, anytime anybody's had any surgery, the scar tissue needs to be addressed.
What kind of common surgeries can you think of that where that is a problem?
Well, all the knee
Obviously.
surgeries for one. Knee surgeries always because of the tissue there.
Mhm.
And then abdominal surgeries are the number one thing. Abdominal surgery, especially women,
Yeah.
they have hysterectomies, they have C-sections, they have laparoscopic stuff, the little holes in there, and it can disrupt. And think of what organ systems are there. So we're talking about the musculoskeletal system, right?
Yeah.
The scar tissue for, let's just say, a C-section sticks to your abdomen, but your bladder's there,
Mm.
your large intestine is there. So if you're somebody who every time you eat or you can get constipated easy. Well, yeah, the scar tissue is pushing up against your intestines and it's making that valve smaller.
Mm.
So it's like a little bit of a blockage. I had one lady, she had like nerve pain down her thigh, and it was because of a gallbladder surgery that she had, and that scar tissue was like adhered to the nerve. And then she goes to the doctor and they check her out. They're like, well, everything looks fine. Well, yeah, but it's not fine.
And
But if the
you said,
second you touch it, yeah, we just manipulated a few times and she was fine. And in addition to that, she was getting married and she was very concerned because she had to pee all the time because her bladder wouldn't expand very much, because as her bladder expands, it bumps the scar tissue and then it signals her that she has to pee and she can't expand very well. So she was nervous. She's like, I have to pee all the time. My fiance gets upset at me. If I'm in a dress, I can't stand up there for an hour. So it becomes very disabling,
yeah,
to have to micromanage your body and be so controlled by its weaknesses. And these are weaknesses that we can easily correct. And it's simple solutions for these big problems. But people don't have the access to these simple solutions because of the construct of our healthcare system and the way we do things. And our point of view is so limited.
it just sounds like there's literally no way to fix it because nobody has ever mentioned it. You know, how many people have this knowledge?
And it's sad. And that's what I was talking about before, is that, people feel like they have to find some guru who's, in a cave somewhere. And if they don't find him, then they're screwed and they can't get help. But it's like, no, these are simple solutions that need to be mainstream. And anybody who's had scar tissue, especially hip replacements, knee replacements, they have a huge scar that's like this long. And it's in an area where all these key muscles are, that they tell them, oh, you need to get your hips stronger. It's like, yeah, but I can't because there's a big cut in it.
Yeah.
I need to get the health of that area back, and then I can start strengthening it. And that's the issue with it. And unfortunately, many people don't have this knowledge. Even if they do, they don't practice it. So you're more inclined to find a really good massage therapist who
Yeah.
uses some of these scraping tools to do it, because in a way where they might be forced to have blinders to these things. You go in for a hip replacement, you're going to get these cookie cutter exercises. You're going to do bridges, you're going to do clams, you're going to do straight, you're going to balance on one leg, you're going to do all these fitness things. But how come nobody is reestablishing the health of a traumatic cut in the side of their hip? Nobody's treating the cut.
Yeah.
And that's the loudest thing, saying like, hey, look at me, I'm the biggest issue here. But
Right.
nobody's treating it. And it's sad, and you can get tremendous amount of improvement so quickly.
What kind of things do you actually treat? What kind
Uh,
of treatments do you offer?
well, on our website, it's all musculoskeletal type thing,
Okay.
but it's all to create balance and symmetry and health. Because
Okay.
the idea is that all the pains you have inside of your body, it comes from one problem. It comes from what I call postural torsion syndrome, where your body is twisted and collapsed. And
Okay.
it collapses because of our shape. We collapse in a very predictable way. So the treatment is to reestablish somebody's posture, regain their symmetry in key body parts, because these body parts decide how that area, the health of that area. So if you establish them, it's like a click. You put them in the right place, they're good. You put this part in the right place, the rest of that area improves as well. And that's what happens when I treat people. They come in for one big problem, but we end up seeing their whole history as we treat them.
Mm.
And then they end up saying, oh, you know what, I got this little thing too, and I got this little thing too, and all of it goes away, because once you establish the health of the body, all those pains will go away. But if you're so focused on the pain, you'll be chasing the pain forever, and you won't really fix it properly.
Do you find people who are inactive, say somebody has a very active job, they're a construction worker, they're a cleaner, do you find those people tend to have more issues, or do you find the people who have inactive jobs?
Well, that's interesting, is that typically the people who do a lot of heavy lifting and stuff like that, they're more prone to traumatic injuries, meaning like they'll like do something and then get hurt in the moment. But the chronic stuff, like for example, the low back pain we talked about earlier, is the number one disability. Most people who suffer from low back pain, I have stationary jobs where they sit. So people who sit are more prone to having chronic injuries than people who are active and moving.
Mm.
So and at the end of the day, it all comes to balance, right? You do too much of anything, you'll get hurt. You move too much, you get hurt. You move too little, you get hurt.
Mhm.
So we really have to understand what our body needs to stay healthy. And it just needs some daily practice of health. Fitness can be a few times a week, as many times as you want. It can be variable. It can be this activity, that activity. But the health to me is really, you just have to make it simple. You just have to spend a little bit of time in the opposite position that you are in all day. So if
Mhm.
you sit all day and you're curled forward and you're like, well, what's a simple thing I can do? Well, the treatment for is this is
Right.
literally the opposite position. And our bodies are so forgiving that you can spend 8 hours curled forward and you can back bend for about 30 seconds and you're break even
Right.
with your posture, right? So think about that return on investment. You tell me 30 seconds this way will allow me to sit 8 hours this way without a problem. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, but nobody ever back bends. So what happens over time? Gravity starts to squish us and we become this curled old person, that the old person everybody sees in their head, and they
Yeah.
get shorter.
Yeah. So, see, yeah, we just take it for granted that that is supposed to happen to you when you hit a certain
Well,
age.
yeah, we're supposed to get old. It's like, no, okay, old in age, but having disabilities and pain everywhere is not, that's not a characteristic of being old.
Mm.
It's just, we think of it, it is. So that goes back to like that flip it concept. If you tend to spend like an hour like this on the computer, it's like, okay, now flip your posture. You need to spend a little bit of time in the opposite position, and
Mhm.
that will help you maintain your balance.
So for older men who already are misaligned in their posture, what would you recommend?
Some of them, if their pain is so chronic and they're so disabled, this is where they may need hands-on treatment. So we operate like here. This is automated stuff. This will give everybody instant access to whatever they need. And if they need more than this, then they can do telehealth where they talk to somebody or go in for hands-on treatment. But that becomes more time-consuming and more expensive. So
Right.
the idea is we can help a large amount of people. Some, unfortunately, may be so limited that they need to go into the deeper parts of the healthcare system, getting in hands on. But even then, they're going to be limited. So then they can default back to this where they can have maintenance
Right.
because insurances typically don't pay for maintenance.
Mm.
They want you out of there within a certain time period. So then what? So we are relevant in protecting people from needing greater hands-on care, but we're also a great place for the people who spend time with the hands-on care who need ongoing maintenance that
Mm.
is inexpensive for them so they can maintain it.
Mhm. Wow. And for children, what do you say? What for? Let's assume we want to raise a new generation that really has some body awareness, that are going to really think of health before they think of fitness. How do we start to do that with the new generation?
Yeah, and that's actually one of my ultimate visions, right? Is to prevent, right? Because right now, with all of us, we're more of a reactive type of treatment. Like we're all messed up, okay, so we need to do something about it. But
Mhm.
how do we keep people from getting messed up, which is easier?
Mhm.
So, number one is we have to give them instant access, right? Because if it's not instant, they'll lose interest right away because some people don't really care too much about their problem because it's not that bad and they don't get it yet.
Right.
That's the problem with these. They don't understand. They don't have that vision, that experience to know that you're going to go down a bad path like this.
Mhm.
So we have to make it instant, number one. Number two is we have to talk to them through the medium that they're on all the time. So one of the things we're evolving is our AI and its ability to give real-time feedback to people. It can analyze your posture right then and there and give you immediate feedback.
Okay.
So we're no longer we're that will educate people that, hey, your posture matters. So
Mhm.
now we're talking about the first line of treatment before they get to a point where they're in pain. Because
Mhm.
then when they're in pain, it's like, oh, we got to treat the pain, but then we got to treat your posture too. So we need to start with the posture.
Okay.
And then number three is I've actually created, it's not out yet, but I'm looking to publish a kid's book that I have where it just shows them, educates them a little bit on, proper posture, jumping, standing, kind of these basics, how to walk properly,
Right.
where it becomes kind of fun and educational. Like it was inspired by my niece because when she was 5, she had a little bit of tension in her right leg.
Okay.
So I started treating her, and I was showing her how to stand, how to walk, kind of making it fun for her. And then she'd be so excited about it, she'd go show her parents.
Did it heal her? Did it cure the problem?
Oh yeah, she ended up doing gymnastics and all that stuff, so she's doing really well, with it. But she was easy to treat, right? Because that clay is soft, easy to move. It's like a lot of us, we become so hard and rigid that it becomes hard for us to mold ourselves, even mentally, right? We become so rigid that
So,
we can't shift our way of thinking. We can't transform our bodies. We become so limited.
yeah,
So educating the kids, and then somehow I would love to be able to get these things into the school system,
right.
because that's where they're all at and that's where they need it. So if we can get that into the school system, then we can really start planting that seed. Even if they don't follow it all the way, the seed is planted and it will grow over time. But
Right.
it's better than them not having any. I've worked with so many people that have no reference for this stuff. They don't even have the beginnings to understand what I'm talking about sometimes. And
Yeah,
that just shows you how far away and how disconnected many of us can be from our bodies. So those people are not going to be successful with any type of treatment that they get. They need to first open their eyes,
mhm.
to it. So that's part of our agenda too.
There's so much I've learned from you today. There's so much misinformation about what we think is a healthy body.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the beauty of this, is that when we think of it the way I'm describing it, it becomes very simple, very tangible, and all of us can feel it.
Yeah,
For example, like if I'm telling you about this stuff, there's a part of our intuition, our body's understanding and awareness, that when I say these things, it's like, yes, that feels right. I don't understand it all the way, but that feels right. To
yeah.
say, okay, it feels like this will get me better.
Mhm.
But if you have tremendous amount of back pain, and somebody says, "Oh, you need to get your core stronger," like, yeah, I get it, but it doesn't feel like all of it. That feels like a piece of it, but it doesn't feel like it's hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah,
Because we're missing a foundational piece. And
right.
once we get this, then get your core strong however you want. You're not going to be limited by your body anymore.
What are three things people can take away? The three things you want people to know right now. I'll tell you what I've gleaned from our conversation. So, one is that I'm completely misinformed about what I think health and fitness are, and that I'm confusing the two sometimes. The second thing is I need to think a lot more about posture and alignment.
Yes.
And then I would say a third takeaway for me is that it's not as simple to think I'm going to do lots of HIIT workouts and I'm going to do a lot of yoga and I will avoid any chronic um, pain, whether that's back or knee, as I start to age.
Yes. So 100%. All those things, and those are in line with, so some strategies for those things that you're talking about, which is actually my 3 points as well, is
Mhm.
that the concept, okay, health before fitness. And
Right.
health is symmetry and balance in your body. So you always have a practice of health, and that will allow you to do whatever fitness you want. And keep in mind that your fitness will come and go. So
Mhm.
don't be married to your fitness. If you're gonna have a constant, it has to be a constant of health, and that can come in many forms. But ultimately, it's all about managing your body, and making sure your body can move in all the ways it's designed to do. And yoga can be quite useful with that, because you end up moving in all these different positions.
And so you would say to people, don't wait for the chronic pain. Start to build your body awareness right now.
Yes, and that will tell you if you have any issues that are sending you down that road of chronic pain.
Mm.
So especially when you flip your postures, if you notice, wow, my right side is so much more limited than my left.
Mm.
Okay, you're a liability walking. You
Wow.
do the wrong thing the wrong way, the wrong time, and you're going to wake up and be like, I don't know what happened. All of
Mm.
a sudden, my back started to hurt. Well, it's like, yeah, we know what happened. It's just you weren't aware of it.
Right.
So we need to make you aware of it, and then we'll give you something simple to do about it that you can fix yourself quickly. And then, a month of therapy at $30, you're good to go, rather than paying all this money, spending all this time, and, getting misinformation potentially.